right now from one misery to another. The Phillies last night, O's and Natty Bows is what they say in Baltimore, and O's were on the board last night for the Phils. In fact, 9 of them, Frank Klose, 97.3, ESPN.com Phillies Insider as this week's mailbag. But, man, last night, a discouraging loss, and Atlanta wins this whole, well, you got this schedule, and they got that schedule. I like what John Kruk said before the game. I don't care who's on the schedule. If you're not winning against these teams, why should I believe in you? And he said, look, you can't go in thinking 5 out of 7 or this out of that. You got to win tonight, and they couldn't get the job done. And tonight, Ranger Suarez pitched pretty well, Frank.
Yeah, also pitching well, John Means. John Means, by the way, is one of the best pitchers in baseball that nobody has ever heard of. So,
WVU, man.
Kruk actually said this as well. It's one thing to face a team and say, well, they're a 40-win team, but at the end of the day, it's the Phillies facing a really good pitcher in John Means. I mean, think back to Phillies-wise, like 1997, Curt Schilling went like 17-10. They had nothing else besides Curt Schilling, or even further back, Steve Carlton winning 27 of the 54 wins back in 1972 or something like that. But you're often only as good as the pitcher you face. Now, you expected the Phillies not to hit a lot off of John Means. Unfortunately, Ranger Suarez gives them a solid performance, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, and unfortunately, that was too much to overcome against the Orioles.
Right, and then, that's just where it gets disheartening. You get up 2 runs in the game, and then you shut them down. You get nothing going offensively, and now you have a bullpen game today. This is, again, where these bullpen games really bring the team down, and it has had a kind of a residual effect. They've won the bullpen games. The problem is the residual effect is costing them the other games.
Exactly, and I've tweeted this before. They might have mustered through a bullpen game. In fact, that blowout they had last week, Hector Neris did pitch the middle innings before it was, out of control. Ended up being 15-8 at the end. But Hector Neris not available the next day. You look at the day before last. We see that the game was just Cam Bedrosian was the only reliever used, right? So after Gibson. So when that happens, your guys aren't available. And then it really does have a trickle-down effect. At least the good news is it seems like everybody is on deck tonight pretty much in this Phillies bullpen, and we'll have to see what happens.
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. What's the loss last night do? Atlanta wins. You're now 3 back. I know you still have Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and they still have a San Diego series. They're in Arizona right now. But how debilitating was that loss last night?
I think if you're going to lose one game, it's going to be the John Means game. I hate to keep coming back to that because, they still did face the bullpen for a couple innings. But you know what? If John Means pitched the day before, you'd feel a lot better about that Baltimore series. But the Phillies should win on paper, except we've seen the problem is the Phillies have been unable to execute. And like you said, if they get through today with a win, the bullpen does well, and then you have some guys not available tomorrow because Archie Bradley pitched last night, for example. Maybe he's not available the next day. Well, then they're at a disadvantage tomorrow. So this is a tough one. The team can't take anything for granted. They need to take every opportunity to score runs. At the end of the day, they have to execute. We've been talking about the schedule for literally months almost, it feels like, Mike. And at the end of the day, they have to execute, and they have to execute without Zach Eflin, and without Rhys Hoskins. And you can see just how badly that affects the team headed down the stretch.
12 games left, 3 games back. They have 12 left to go, including 3 against the Braves. That will be coming up in 2 weeks from now. They have 2 more against Baltimore, 4 against Pittsburgh before they play Atlanta. They have to be within striking distance because they close the season off against the Marlins, and that typically you can't depend on having to play the Marlins and needing those wins. You need to at least be tied or maybe even ahead after that Braves series. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, you really do. Part of the problem is, you would hope they would pick up a game when the Braves were facing the Giants. The Giants do not have the competition. Excuse me, the Braves don't have the competition they had like the Giants in Arizona. So you really have to make sure that you at least win enough of these games in these 2 series against the Orioles and the Pirates that you can pick up. Now you're going to need to pick up a game or 2 again before you come around and get to the Braves. So that's part of the problem here is you really need to pick up some games before that Braves series as well.
How about this question from John in the mailbag? It really puts on the light with 12 games left and you're this close to the wild card and this close to first place. How can you not look at the blown saves, 34, and wonder what could have been?
So yeah, I really broke down who blew what. Now, there's a few things I want to point out with this, right? Because automatically you think of the closer when you think of blown saves. Now, Hector Neris did blow 6 as the closer. He had that hard luck blown save a week ago when he came in with 2 runners on at second and third and got them out of a tough. I thought he did a good job in that inning and keeping out further trouble, but really it's kind of spread around the middle relievers, and to me that makes me think of two things that are beyond just the number of blown saves. First, it's the offense, right? The offense is not scoring a lot of runs early, and when the Phillies don't take leads, that means the margin is razor thin for anybody that comes in. So if you look around the list, then the numbers of people that have blown saves, even Ranger Suarez has 3 blown saves. Connor Brogdon 4. Sam Coonrod, Archie Bradley, Jose Alvarado also have 3. So does Ian Kennedy as a Philly. Of course, he's a recent guy. Brandon Kinsler, Enyel De Los Santos, David Hale, Neftali Feliz. All goes back to that coming in with razor thin margins. You want more out of the offense, and you also need more out of the starting pitching. So bullpen game right now, the reason why the Phillies were willing to give up on Vince Velasquez is they didn't think the bullpen game was any worse than Vince Velasquez. But for all the games, they trotted out Vince Velasquez and Spencer Howard and Matt Moore and Chase Anderson, and they departed the games early. The bullpen has that many more innings to try to keep the team in the game. So, all of this is a perfect storm that leads to these blown saves. It's not just the back end just coming in and blowing a lead. A lot of this is all these other problems that the Phillies are having right now. So that's a major roster construction issue. It's not something that can be simply blamed on the bullpen even now when you consider all these other factors. They need to get some starters that go deeper into the games, and they need to get the offense going so that they have more of a lead, that the relievers aren't all coming in with a 1-run lead and kind of living on the edge, so to speak.
All right, a couple questions about the kind of the future here. Rich wants to know, what are the odds on the Phillies trying to sell high after Gene Segura's big year here?
Well, I think we know that the Phillies need to improve their offense and their defense in the infield. Segura, of course, was the one that was giving them both. But I would say right now I would not rule out trading him. But at the same time, I don't think the Phillies need to look to trade him to get value. I think they need to totally reconstruct this whole infield and also address center field and left field. Small task, right? So I think everything's on the table right now. If the Phillies can bring in some pieces that are good defensive options in the infield, they'll do it. Could mean that he is shipped out just because they can get good value in return, but then they got to bring some other players in. So it's going to be a really interesting offseason. I think the Phillies are going to really find some players that can mix and match a little bit. I think Chris Bryant is going to be a tremendous fit if the Phillies can land him, if they can pay him the most money, because he can play third base, he can play some outfield, gives you some options there. And one name I would actually consider too is Cody Bellinger, who's rumored to be perhaps up for trade this offseason from the Dodgers. He hasn't had a good offensive year this year or last, really, but he can play a bunch of positions. So that, creating those options and creating some good defense, I think the Phillies will react accordingly at the end of the day. And I think one thing I would caution, Bryson Stott's their top prospect, will play either shortstop or second base. You don't want to just keep penciling these guys in and thinking they're going to solve the problem. Scott Kingery was going to solve the problem at second before. Alec Bohm was going to solve the problem at third. And right now, neither of them are really probably the long-term solution at either position. So I think we're going to see, as we saw before with Dave Dombrowski making those radical moves in the front office, I can see him making some radical moves on this Phillies lineup. So I'm just going to say buckle in and stay tuned and see what happens this offseason. I expect him to be busy.
So on that front, Van says, starting pitching, who are the top free agents? Center, left, third. It looks like, McCutchen, Odubel, third base, possibly shortstop, as you just kind of hinted at. There's going to be a lot of turnover here, it looks like.
Yeah, in fact, it looks like Van wants me to reconstruct the entire roster in the answer in one question. But, I think that there are some free agents departing. Herrera and McCutchen are going to open up center and left. That could be part of the solution to, if Alec Bohm ends up being an outfielder, for example. I think the Phillies really are going to focus on finding a good center fielder, get that defense up the middle. Didi Gregorius could be a sunk cost. It could, if his health is really what's doing this and his health isn't going to improve, they got to think long and hard about what to do with Didi Gregorius. But they've got some other money coming off the books. Velasquez, Moore, Anderson, Neris, Bradley. They got a lot to fill, which is why I think this is going to be kind of a radical reimagining of this roster. I think Dave Dombrowski is really good, as we saw with Kyle Gibson. He's good at finding the names, and I said this ahead of the trade deadline. He's going to find the types that we don't expect, where there's a lot of value in the player. So I think I can see him picking up some names that right now we're not thinking of, that he's going to pick up, that's going to make a big difference. I'd like to see some depth. Tyler Anderson, the guy they almost traded for, would be good at the back end. But starting pitcher-wise, there's a lot of guys that might be in the middle. Maybe they pay for Max Scherzer on a short-term deal. I don't know. I guess it all depends on the other moves. So I think this is just going to be a really busy offseason.
And we only have about a minute, though, Frank, but the questions that we're getting, they all seem to acknowledge that maybe this team's not making the playoffs. Is that what you're reading, too?
I would say so. But you know what? I think this Phillies team going into this season, the best-case scenario was they sneak into the playoffs. They still could sneak into the playoffs, but I think all along Dave Dombrowski knew the major work would be his first offseason, which really hasn't happened yet. He didn't join on until mid-December, when a lot of decisions were made. This offseason is going to be a busy one.
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. He answers your Phillies questions in the mailbag. Just about 3 weeks left to go in the season. The Phillies are 3 back with 12 to go. So razor-thin margin of error at this point right now. And, of course, they are playing the Braves after they have a series with the Orioles. They have a 4-game set with Pittsburgh, and then they will play Atlanta. They are currently 3 back after losing 2 in a row. Atlanta has now won 2 in a row. There we go. All right, Frank, appreciate it, man.
Good to talk to you, Mike.
As always, Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the Phillies, does a great job. His mailbag appears Tuesdays on 97.3 ESPN.com.